Hey guys, what's up? I'm Speo with the Voice of Reason, and this is the fourth and last part in my glitch hop track analysis series on my track Penguin. Today I'll take a look at the typical glitch hop snare and also at the shuffling on my percussion, which makes it super funky. Well, funky enough, I suppose. So first off, let's cover the snare. In my case, the snare is comprised out of 3 individual samples, and they all are shortened. So what I did was I selected the snare sample in the Nano sampler right here in the Kong and hit this little edit sample button, and then I brought up the ending marker right to about 0.1 milliseconds to get rid of the noise tail, which a lot of these snare samples have. So I kind of just cut it off, which makes it a lot more snappy and kind of nice. And of course, all of these samples are triggered at once in the sequencer, as you can see right here. And they are all routed out the same output, which is 15 and 16 in my case. So I selected it for each one of the snares. And this 15-16 is connected with my snare copy mix channel. I'll cover the devices that are in this mix channel in just a second, but first I want to talk a little bit about snare tuning. Snare tuning is a technique that is essential to making a good sounding glitch hop snare, and it is a technique I first stumbled upon in a Protostar tutorial. Protostar is an awesome and experienced producer who makes pretty great Reason tutorials, and you can check them out right here. And in a video of his, I first stumbled upon this technique, and I'll just quickly show you what it's about. So what you do is, first off, you chuck an equalizer into the mix channel where your snares are routed at, and then you select a parameter and set the frequency there where you want your snare to sit. So in a glitch hop track, that would be at about 250 Hertz. And there you bring the gain all the way up to about 18 dB, and the Q as well, until you have this very kind of narrow summit right here. And then you select your snare and you play with this pitch knob right here. You kind of just sweep through the pitches until the resonant sound at 250 Hertz is as loud as it gets. Right about here you can really hear this resonant sound at 250 Hertz very prominently. And this is the sound you're going for. So do this with all of your different snare samples. So the resonant kind of sound really comes out. And then what I did then is just deleting the equalizer again and chucking in a faturator. So this faturator rack extension is not really essential to the sound. It's just there to give it some more flavor. And what I did was I set the drive at 100% and the color at 27% and the mix at 75. And like I said, it just adds some color. Next up, we've got the Scream for Distortion, which is of course there for the tape distortion. Got the damage at 42, the mode at tape of course, the speed up at 127 and the compression at 24. Tape distortion is a vital part for this, for any kind of snare really. I'd suggest slamming tape distortion on every snare you got. And we're already getting closer to that glitchy kind of glitch hop snare sound. Next up we got the equalizer, and this is where the 250 Hertz are boosted again. So some people might recommend putting the equalizer in front of the tape distortion, but in my experience putting it afterwards just sounds a bit nicer to my ears. I think you should experiment yourself and just try out which technique gives you more pleasure. So in my case, I put it after the distortion and once again boost the 250 Hertz with quite a lot of dB. So I've got it at 15.7 and the Q at 10.7. Then I cut a big hole into the frequency spectrum at 491 Hertz. So between 400 and 500 Hertz are the frequencies in snares that are kind of woody and not really given much to the sound. So I'd suggest just cutting those. And then I turn on the high shelf and boosted some highs just to make it a little bit more snappy and more hissing. Next up we've got the room reverb. On the glitch hop snare I'd suggest putting only a very little, a tiny amount of reverb, because reverb just takes away this very snappy kind of feeling. So I've got the dry wet down at 5 and the decay at 17. Algorithm is of course room, and the room shape is number 2. Which just gives it some stereo feel. And last but not least is the typical stereo imager, and this one just widens the frequencies that are over 1.02 kilohertz, and it just makes the snare more prominent in the mix, because then the higher frequencies are spread across the stereo field, and it just gives it this big feeling to the snare. Especially when they're all hit together. And that's all there is to the glitch shop snare, at least in my track Penguin. Now to the shuffling. So what shuffling actually does is it moves 2 notes that are next to each other closer together, creating a gap between those 2 notes and the next 2 notes, and so on. And in Reason it's actually quite easy to achieve using the ReGroove mixer. But first off, let me just quickly show you what this drum loop right here would sound like without shuffling. It's kind of lame and kind of straightforward. So what I did was I opened up the ReGroove mixer by clicking this symbol right here and selected a shuffle value of about 66% on the A1 channel. And then in the sequencer again, I opened up this little checkbox right here on the percussion lane and selected the A1 channel, which already says 66%. And there the magic happens. So that concludes the Glitch Shop track analysis series on Penguin. I hope these videos were helpful and maybe even inspiring for your own Glitch Shop track production. And I hope to see you in the upcoming videos. I plan to do a couple of more videos on rack extensions and maybe even another track analysis on an upcoming track, which I haven't quite finished yet. So we'll see. Anyhow, see you next time. My name's Speo, this was The Voice of Reason. Have a good one, or whatever you're having.